thank you to everybody out there for joining us on this Saturday afternoon here in Massachusetts. I am really grateful. My name is Lydia Mann. I'm the Director of Admissions Outreach here at Clark University. Before coming to Clark, I actually worked as a high school counselor, a college counselor at a boarding school. So this session on applying to Clark and college tips tips for the college search, I should say, is near and dear to my heart, and it's what I used to do for many years. So I'm excited that we can offer this to you. It's just some general good advice and then a little bit of information on our process specifically. I am joined by two current Clarkies who I'd love to have introduce themselves. So Griffin, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, my name is Griffin Minigello. I'm now a senior here at Clark, or in my room at Zoom University. But we're still in person too, which is really nice. On campus, I am president of Rock U, which is radio station of Clark University, as well as leading some research opportunities in the Clark Arboretum, which is a 26-acre piece of land that Clark owns that we're restoring. Besides that, that's me. I'm from Marblehead, Massachusetts, and now I've done the college process. I did it 4 years ago, but not much has changed, but I know you guys are going through a lot of different things, but we'll cover all that today.
Thank you. And Henley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Henley. I use he, him, or they, them pronouns. I am a junior here at Clark University, double majoring in English and Women's and Gender Studies, possibly minoring in creative writing, but we're not quite sure about that yet. Outside of my academics here at Clark, I'm one of the co-directors of Variant Dance Troupe, which is our non-audition based dance group. I'm also the gender advocate for PRISM, which is the LGBTQ organization here at Clark. And I am a resident advisor in one of our first year residence halls.
Great, thank you both. All right, so I think we should start at the beginning. Even though some of you may be a little bit further along in your college search process, it's still just October. In most deadlines, the first deadlines you're going to see are going to be November 1st or November 15th. So for those of you who are still working on those November applications or looking more to the regular decision process in January, I hope that this is helpful. As you're looking at creating a list of schools that you're going to apply to, it's really, really important that your list is balanced. And I think those of us in admissions know what that means, and sometimes we forget to tell you what that means. A balanced list means that you're going to have a range of schools in terms of things like selectivity and where you fall within their freshman class profile. So the students coming in, what grades did they have if the school requires test scores, which is changing rapidly right now, but what scores were they? What kind of students do they tend to attract? And are you in that profile, that general profile? Once you sort of figure out your own stats, you're going to want a handful of schools that are reaches. So I'm a little bit below the profile, but I've got a good shot. You're going to want some schools that are target schools. So this sounds just like me on paper. I can't guarantee that it's me, but it sounds just like me on paper. And then you're going to want some schools that we call most possible schools. So I'm a little bit above profile, and I'm pretty sure that I would be admitted to this place. And if you have those three buckets, you're going to have a really successful application process. Successful does not mean that you're admitted to every single school that you apply to. In fact, as a former college counselor, I don't always think that that is the most healthy thing for us to have happen, right? If you're early decision, it's a totally different conversation. But if you're submitting regular decision applications, in some ways, it's a real chance to grow, to hear this wasn't the right school for you, and to reflect on why that might be, and then to pivot and really, really enjoy the place that you do go. So that's why those three buckets are really important. It's important that you meet all your deadlines throughout this process, including for financial aid. Deadlines are often pretty set in stone. And don't wait until the last minute to get your applications done. Even the stuff like the demographic information, it's really easy to type your address incorrectly. So you just want to make sure that you leave yourself enough hours to review what you've done. Make sure that you're excited about every school on your list. Occasionally, I would work with a student who was admitted to 2 or 3 colleges, and they would come to me really disappointed. And I would wonder why. We've been accepted to 2 or 3 colleges. That is amazing. You're going to get to go to school. You're going to get to have these amazing opportunities, incredible resources, really smart faculty, peers who challenge you. And they would say, but I didn't like this one. And I would really wonder why they applied in the first place. So make sure that you can find something that you can really get pretty excited about in every single school. And then ask for help. And that could be from friends, family members, high school teachers, and it can also be from us in the college admission offices. So please, please, please ask us if you have a question. It is why we're here. It is what we get paid to do, and it's actually what we enjoy doing the most at Clark. I'm actually going to ask Griffin a question about this process right now, which is, I'm curious for you, when you applied to school, was it difficult to figure out which schools you were actually going to submit an application to?
Yeah, actually, so I tried to cast a wide net because I knew a very important thing for me would be the college tour and seeing where the place I was going to live and the atmosphere. And I have a twin sister as well, so we were doing the process at the same time. So you can't tour every school that you apply to. So we toured after we heard back, which made every tour mean a little bit more because I knew I was thinking about actually going to that place. But there's also the flip side of it. If you can get a tour, obviously go do one. We'd love to see you. But yeah, the most difficult part, I would say, was dealing with the stress of planning your future in the existential sense. But as again, I had my twin sister help me out with that part. And I hope all of you have someone else that you can rely on for that.
Thank you, Griffin.
Did that answer your question? Sorry.
What was that?
Did that answer your question?
Yes, perfect. And I would say too, if the stress of your planning your future is really, really difficult, pick a place where that's going to help you do that for the next 4 years too, right? Because those places exist as well. The extracurricular activities list. This is something that students would stress out about a lot when I was a college counselor, and it's still something that I get a lot of questions about here at Clark. What do you put on this list? What counts as an extracurricular activity? I always tell students, be really honest, and that more is not necessarily better. So if you attended one club meeting for the chess club in 9th grade, I probably don't need to know that you did that. You didn't enjoy it, you didn't go back, it wasn't important to you. But if you attended chess club for all 4 years and you met twice a week, and it really felt like something fun and something that you're going to continue well past high school, that's an activity that I want to know about, right? You don't have to fill out all of the empty slots. 3 really wonderful activities can be as good as 8 really wonderful activities. This year, we know that they're going to look a little bit different. We'll talk about that more later. So just know right now that if you are somebody who works outside of high school, or if you're somebody who contributes mightily to your family, that matters a lot too. That definitely goes on your extracurricular activity list, and describe it as best you can. And it's something that we see quite often, so you won't be the only one doing that. The essay. This is another piece of the college application that students spend a lot of time worrying about, and is actually designed to be one of the more fun parts of the application process, because you get to control what you want us to learn about you, right? And so if we can reframe it and think, I actually have a chance to totally tell somebody what is most important to me, I hope it becomes a little bit more exciting to you. Things to keep in mind, it's a personal narrative, it's not a history paper. So if something like the 5-paragraph essay just totally scares you off, you don't have to write it for me. You can treat this very much like a memoir or a journal entry, but a little bit more polished, but something that is really coming from your heart and from the things that you care most about. You don't have to have a unique topic for this essay. Some students feel like they have to have lived through something really exciting or really difficult. They have to have traveled to a faraway land. They have to have paid a lot of money to do some sort of summer program. None of that is true. One of my favorite essays, I'm actually going to combine this with the bottom bullet point, which is do the time capsule activity. So if you are struggling and thinking, I've got to write about an experience I had or somebody I know, I think that's often first what comes to our minds. You can actually tell me about something that you own or something that you've been able to see, and that's the time capsule activity. So take 10 minutes and write down 5 things that you would put into a box, bury the box, and in 20 years, somebody could open that box and figure out who you were at 17, 18, or 19 years old. If you do that, Do this with a friend is what I suggest. Share those 5 items. What did you put in your box? Why did you put that in your time capsule? And have a real conversation about it. And I bet that one of those things could probably be the beginning of your college essay. So when I said your topic doesn't have to be unique, I was doing this exercise with a group of students once, and a student threw in his 2 small, very old Converse sneakers into his time capsule. Not a unique item. A lot of us have owned Converse sneakers at some point in our lives. Why you're hanging on to Converses that are too small was really interesting to me. It seemed a little bit unusual. And so we started talking about it. And the student was from New York City, and they were the shoes that he was wearing the first time his mother let him walk around New York City alone, and what it felt like to be independent and to explore such big buildings, to be scared of getting lost. It was an excellent college essay. And I have to tell you, he had written one before that that was also good, but this one was so much better, and it was less unique, but it was more personal, and I felt like I heard his voice throughout the essay. So please don't be afraid to just pick an everyday object and tell me who you are through that. And when you need help with the essay, you don't have to seek a service, pay anybody. You really don't have to do that. The best help you can get is probably from one of your good friends, a parent or a teacher, whoever you trust most, because college admissions officers want to hear your voice. And I would so much rather see an essay with imperfections that tells me who you are through the way you write, than see a perfect essay that sounds like it was written by somebody 35 years your senior. Henley is a resident English major, and I would love to have you describe a little bit your essay process and how you approached it and who might have helped you.
Absolutely. This essay was really difficult for me because there was a lot, like the stakes feel really high. You know, I had written tons of essays for classes and for grades before, but this is something that it feels like it has a bit more weight to it than like just get like something you write for class. So I was initially really intimidated, and I had so many ideas and I didn't know which would be the best one, and I felt like it had to be the best. So what I actually ended up doing was I narrowed it down to 3 different ideas. And I wrote like the first maybe half a page or so of each of those 3 ideas. And then I took them to one of my English teachers who I had for my 9th grade English class. At this point, I'm a senior in high school. So this is a teacher who had me like 3 or 4 years before that. And, you know, I'd go to his room to eat lunch, like knew me very well. And he was able to kind of help me pick which of those 3 would kind of create the most authentic and overall successful essay. And really kind of drawing out which elements, really there were some elements from all 3 of those papers that kind of made it into my final essay, which ended up being about the first time I played my ukulele at an open mic, and all of the mistakes that I made, but the fact that I kept playing and kept performing and didn't stop, and kind of tying that back to my perfectionist tendencies, which probably came out in the paper in and of themselves. But it was really helpful to get somebody else's perspective, because I'm the kind of person who, the more I spend time with my writing, the more I get in my own head, and the more I make unnecessary edits and changes that actually make the paper worse. So it was helpful to kind of have somebody with fresh eyes and fresh perspective to kind of help me along the way. And it also helped that person knew me very well. So.
Thank you, Henley. All right. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk specifically about Clark for a little while. On your screen, you'll see our application deadline. So if you are thinking that you're going to put in an application to Clark, you have 4 choices. And if you are a transfer student, the choices are a little bit different, and you're welcome to reach out to me after this is over so we can talk more. But early decision and early action are due on November 15th this year. Early decision is a binding option. So I love Clark, you're my first choice. It's where I want to go. I'm not going to apply anywhere else if I'm admitted. And early action being a non-binding option. So I I really like Clark. I'd like to know whether or not I was admitted to Clark a little bit earlier. We're going to release early action probably in mid-January. I'm ready to apply to college, but I don't know that you're my number one choice, or I need to find out more about financial aid from other schools or whatever it is. So you're going to have until May 1st to tell us what you want to do. And then on January 15th, we have early decision 2, which is for students who, yes, you're my first choice, I just needed more time to figure that out, and regular decision, which is a much more traditional application type, which is apply on January 15th, find out from us in March at some point, and then you have until May 1st to tell us whether or not you'd like to come to Clark. Your financial aid applications are due on the same day as your admissions applications. We require 1 teacher recommendation at Clark. I know that some of your high schools encourage you to get 2 teacher recommendations. So if you get 2, please send us both. It doesn't bother us to read 2. If you get 5, I question that only because your teachers and the people who know you well start to say the same things about you. So it actually doesn't add much more to your file once you get up in numbers. It just creates more paperwork for you and the people around you. And then we also require a counselor recommendation. And we know that this year you may not know your high school counselor as well as you knew them in years previously if you're learning remotely, if their caseload has changed dramatically. So we're going to be really flexible with your counselors for what that looks like this year. We do need to receive the paperwork though. They're also probably going to send us some information about what your high school looks like, and that's really helpful. We're going to need all of your high school transcripts. If you've transferred high schools, we need all of them. We're going to need the common application. We're going to need the essay that we just talked about. And then we have some optional pieces of the application. One is the interview. It is optional, but this year we have increased our ability to do Skype or online interviews tremendously. So we highly, highly encourage it. And who knows, you might get onto your interview and see one of us on the other side of the screen. And it should be a fun conversation. It should last 20 minutes, maybe 25. We want you to come in thinking about the things that you're most excited about, that you're most proud of, places where you excel. This should be a time for you to reflect on your high school history in a really positive way. So think about those things and you'll be ready. And then we want to answer any questions that you have about Clark. And the final thing that's optional is the SAT or ACT. It is truly, truly, truly optional. I can't say that enough. We've been tests optional since 2012. We know how to read applications in a test optional format. Please don't do anything that makes you feel unsafe. Don't cross state lines in a pandemic if you don't feel comfortable doing so. You do not need an SAT score to apply to Clark, and you will be awarded the same merit scholarships whether or not you submit a test score. So truly test optional. We promised that we would talk about how the process looks a little bit different this year. As a staff at Clark, we've been doing a lot of reflecting on what would it be like to be a high school senior right now. And no matter which way we look at this, it can't be easy, right? It doesn't look like when we were high school seniors, and the challenges that you have are new and they are different. And I'm sure that at times they feel overwhelming. And so we decided as a team that we would do whatever we could in our control to make this a little bit better, right? So we've moved our ED1 and EA deadlines actually. They used to be November 1st and we've pushed them back 2 weeks till November 15th. Hopefully, if your school got started a little bit late, this gives you time to earn more grades, get to know your teachers better, or if it was just an adjustment to hybrid learning or whatever your situation was, that the extra 2 weeks give you a little bit of extra time to prep your applications. Our application fee this year is exactly $0. It used to be $60 to apply to Clark. Our Board of Trustees had a very thoughtful conversation where they recognized that so much has changed in our current landscape with this pandemic, and a lot of what changed for a lot of families is financial stress. And so we want every single student who wants to apply to Clark to have the opportunity to apply to Clark. You do not need a fee waiver. You do not need to email us. It is absolutely $0. You'll just bypass that part of the application as you're clicking next towards the end. I talked about extracurricular activities earlier. We know that they're going to look different this year. So I really encouraged you before to write down your work experience, to write down what you're doing with family. I would also ask you to write down what you're doing perhaps a little bit more solo right now. So you might not be playing soccer. You might not have had the baseball season. The spring play might have been canceled. Summer camp didn't happen. Whatever your normal activities are, we know that life has shifted for a lot of us. And so if you have become a journaler throughout this and you keep a journal and it's really important to you now, tell me about it. If you picked up a new hobby like guitar, Henley picked up ukulele at some point. If you are suddenly a 3D puzzle master, tell me about all of that as well. The COVID-19 optional essay on the Common App, I think it's 250 words. You can talk about how this pandemic has affected your life. It is truly optional. I know that some schools are giving different advice, so I do recommend that any college you're applying to, you can reach out and ask this question for how they're handling this essay, but at Clark, it is truly, truly optional. If you need to submit the essay to explain some circumstances that have changed in your life, you want us to know for sure that your school moved to pass-fail, your family went through something difficult, feel free to write that. If that is too hard to write, don't write it. It doesn't matter to us. We're going to treat every applicant the same throughout the process. So truly use that space as you want to use it. And then what hasn't changed at Clark is that we're still test optional. I'll say it again. We're very proud of it. We're really proud of it this year. We feel like we're in a good place to handle all of the applications that will come in without test scores. And I'm actually excited to see them. Who knows where testing stands 2 years from now, right? All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about who we look for too. So now you know how we do the process. You know the nuts and bolts. I should have said we read every application at least twice in full, every teacher rec, every piece of writing that you submit. So we are going to take a really full look at what you send us. But who really thrives at Clark? For us, it's students who really like to challenge themselves in a classroom and they're excited about learning. And that doesn't mean that if your school offers AP, honors, or IB classes that you've taken every single one. It means that you've taken a few in the subjects that you like the most, right? And maybe it wasn't the easiest day, but you had a lot of fun doing it. And that really matters to us here at Clark. We have a really hands-on learning environment where you're going to be working with other people very often. You might be working in our local community in some of your classes. And we want students who are excited about those opportunities and also resilient enough to know that when it doesn't go perfectly, there's always a second try, right? Learning is a collaborative process. It's not done in a bubble. Clark didn't discover wind chill. We discovered wind chill on campus by one person. That was not how that happened. So people who are excited about working with each other and sharing knowledge. They want to be involved in multiple communities. You heard from Griffin and Henley how many things they do on campus. And I would say that there's one influences the other, right? Like one activity makes you better at another. So we're looking for students who recognize that as well. You've got to be excited about Clark. You've got to be excited about the city of Worcester. We are definitely in the middle of a city. We do have green spaces, but that has to be something that you want out of your college experience. Our students want to better themselves through higher education, but they also want to better the world. And this is often simultaneous. And I think that's really important. And I often use one of our graduates, Ron Shake, as an example. He is the founder of Panera Bread, which many of you on this call probably know. Maybe you've eaten Panera Bread soup or sandwiches at some point in your life. At first, it was a really great opportunity for him, right? He starts this really successful food chain. In some ways, he solved a problem. At that time that it started, there really wasn't healthy food on the go, and suddenly we all had access to salads as we ran errands. But he's doing this. He's certainly successful in his own right. And I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time when Ron Shake said, I wonder what would happen if we opened Panera Cares cafes. It would be pay-as-you-go cafes, pay as you can. And so my gym was actually right next door to the very first Panera Cares cafe. And I could go in and feel like I had had a great week, I'd saved some money, and I wanted to pay $10 for a cup of coffee. So I could. It's the same experience at any other Panera. And then the person behind me could say, you know, this has been a really rough week. I just need a sandwich and I can't pay anything for it. And that would be fine. And we would get the same service, we'd get the same quality of food. There was a lot of skepticism as to whether or not this idea would work, if people would balance themselves when given the opportunity to exist in this type of market. it worked. So I think Ron Shaik is a really great example of somebody who has done well for himself and has actually solved some problems in some smaller neighborhoods as well. And then you have to be somebody who not only appreciates the experiences and viewpoints of others, but actually seeks them out. So you're looking to find points of view that might be different from your own because you know that you benefit from having those conversations. That's really important to us too. Now that I've described that, I would love to have, I don't know, Henley, maybe you could start just quickly whether or not you see some of those qualities reflected in the other students whom you're studying with.
Yes, absolutely. I do see a lot of these qualities in the people that I surround myself with at Clark, particularly the collaboration in terms of academics. There have been so many times where if I'm struggling with an assignment for a class or I need some feedback on a paper, if I reach out to one of my friends in the class, they're more than willing to help me. I swap papers with my friends in my classes all the time. And then there were even a few times my first year I was taking some math and physics courses, which is a little bit out of my element. If I messaged a friend in the class at like midnight the night before my homework was due, and I said, you know what, I'm really stuck on one of these problems, I cannot for the life of me figure it out, they would message me back right away and be like, oh yeah, I totally, I just finished it. Do you want to meet me in the library in 5 minutes? So Clark students really do like care about each other and want to see each other succeed. At least in my experience.
Thank you. Griffin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so free time was a new concept for me when coming to college because you are going through a big transition of one schedule that you've had for the past 4 years to something new. So I was more of the sports than extracurriculars in high school. And then Francie McGee, the Dean of Students, on our first day said, like, once you come to Clark or any college, you no longer have free time. You just have unscheduled time. And I never realized that that's a skill to handle your unscheduled time. And I look around Clark, and I was not involved in clubs for my first 2 years. And then I'm looking around, I'm like, all my friends don't have as much free time as me. Like, what are you all doing? They're like, dude, we're in like 3 clubs at this point. We're doing this, this, and this. So I did feel a little bit behind on the Clark grind of people knowing how to do it. But I've caught up at this point. And that's just where I see it on campus. It's just like the drive of all the students just trying to get involved in what they actually want to do. Because something about a Clark student is they won't do something if they don't want to do it in the nicest way possible. But they will all find their niche. That's what I have to add to that if there's any other parts you're looking for.
Great, thank you. All right, so now we are going to enter the most important part of this webinar, which is your questions. So here at Clark, if this is your first webinar with us through Clarktoberfest, we use the Q&A feature. So you can hover above or below on your screen, this above or below the slideshow, depending on how your Zoom is set up, and enter your question into Q&A. If it goes in the chat, I'm sorry, I won't see it. So please make sure it gets in the Q&A. But we do have a few questions already. I think we have some people who know how we do this. So welcome back. I'm going to answer some of the quick ones right now. When do you find out if you apply ED? When do you get your decision? So if you apply early decision 1 to November 15th, our goal is to have those out to you mid to late December. So a little bit earlier than early action. If you apply early decision 2, the deadline being January 15th, we hope to have those back to you by late February. Again, a little bit earlier than the regular decision notification of March. So we do want to turn those around as quickly as we can. And when you find out your decision from us, you will also find out any financial aid you've been awarded, if that's need-based or merit-based financial aid. Somebody asking about the admissions interview, which I know, yeah.
Sorry, I can take this one. I don't know how fluidly we're trying to do this. So there's actually 2 in the chat about these. There's one that says, how does the optional Clark admissions counselor interview fit into the application process? Those are actually done by students who are not all students, but the admissions students who are trained in doing online interviews. As much as the counseling staff likes us. They don't need our input as much as they're trained. They know what's to do. The goal of that interview is just to learn something past the Common App. And like the whole thing is transitioning. So if you forget to add that you're a 3D puzzle master, tell me about it. Tell me about like the past 3 favorite books that you read that actually got you through the past 4 months. So that's more that we want to see. I love just hearing the interesting things that other students are doing, especially high school students that are going through this transition. So I just don't go into it nervous. Too, is because it is a student and we're just really want to hear what type of person is applying to Clark right now. And the second one is like what types of questions are asked in the interview. We do have a sheet of questions. I know that we're supposed to ask all of them, and sometimes we do. But mostly it's stuff like what's a class that influenced you? What is your favorite book? What teacher helped you along? What's a secret cheerleader that you haven't recognized in your life but could recognize now? So that's just what the online interviews are meant to do. And we love to see people sign up for them too, because it fills our day.
Absolutely. That's a good summary. Griffin is right. When we look at the application as a full application, we're going to read some of the things that you brought up in the interview, but it's the way that people write up an interview report is just tell us what you talked about. So that if it's not in the application, there's another place where it landed. Sometimes students wonder if they can do poorly on an interview. I promise you won't. An interview won't hurt you. It's only going to help because we're going to understand a little bit more about what you care about.
Can I add something really quickly?
Yeah, go for it, Henley.
So I also do interviews for students interested in applying to Clark. And I would say that my favorite interviews that I've sat in on have been interviews where the students are telling stories. So it's like a much more effective way for me to get to know you. If you're like telling me a story about, if you're talking about a club that you're involved in, I want to know like why you got involved in that club, how you got involved in that club, what kinds of struggles have you faced, what were some of like the most rewarding moments, rather than just like listing all of the things that you've done. I just like feel like I have a much better sense of like who you are holistically. If you like add like extra details and really approach it from more of like a storytelling point of view. So that would be like my best advice for any students who are looking to do interviews.
Good advice. This is one about IB and AP classes. Is it okay if you didn't take any? Can dual enrollment fill that need instead? Absolutely. Whatever is challenging at your high school counts. And I know that there are high schools that do not offer upper level classes. They only offer a standard English class, a standard calculus class, whatever it is. We are always going to look at your application in the context of your high school. So if it wasn't available to you, it is not your fault. So please don't worry too much about it. I always just say that so that if we have any juniors on this call who are thinking, I don't know if I'm going to take any honors courses senior year, you might want to try one. It's never a bad idea to sort of put yourself out there and learn a little bit. This is one, I think for the two of you would be the best people to answer this question. What is life like on campus right now? I'll throw in some statistics. So we had about 80% of our students return to campus. About a third of our classes are fully remote. You have the option to learn remote if you would prefer. A third are fully remote, a third are hybrid, and a third are fully in person. We are testing, we're doing COVID testing for students every 3 days. We are testing faculty and staff at a minimum of once a week. So I think we have about 60,000 COVID tests done at Clark, and we are still going. So we're still on campus. So maybe we'll start with Henley on this one and then you, Griffin. What is it like to be a student at Clark this semester?
Yes. So I am I mentioned I'm a junior and I'm an RA on campus. So I'm living in a first year residence hall. 3 of my classes are fully online. 1 of them is fully in person. In general, living on campus, I think students, there's definitely a culture of accountability right now, where students are trying to make sure that we're all doing the things that are necessary to keep our community healthy. A lot of the conversations around kind of the restrictions and the way that we're going about our daily lives on campus have to do with our very like community oriented, which is like one of I think the strengths of Clark is that we're very concerned about the community that we're living in. Yeah, in general, I've felt very great about like the restrictions that are in place. Lydia mentioned that students are tested once every 3 days, but we also have the opportunity to get tested more if we'd like. So I end up getting tested every other day. And there have been times where I've been tested every day for a week or two. So yeah, that's a bit from my perspective. I don't know, Griffin, if you have anything to add.
I mean, I would say it's weird, but the unofficial motto of Clark is keep Clark weird, or maybe we moved that to our official motto. I don't really know. But life on campus actually, to my perspective, didn't change as much as I thought it would. Clark still ran their orientation program. I still had friends being peer mentors. And even now they're doing their job with the first years like a month into longer. It's still, the green gets filled on warm days. There's still yoga classes 6 feet apart. Everyone at Clark will wear their own individual cool mask. It's kind of like stickers. I don't know why Clark students love them so much. I guess it's just to show off a little bit more of your personality. So rather than viewing it in the form of restrictions, we have seen it more of an adaptation to the environment, which I really thought was going to happen. My mom and I knew I didn't really have to worry much about going back to Clark. If you pay attention online to everything, yeah, you'll get scared. Yeah, there's a lot of student voices that you can hear. You can be connected to everyone. But you're never going to be put in a situation that you don't feel comfortable in. And you can always remove yourself from one too. So there was almost every option given to us to come back. And I feel like each person picked the one that worked best. And the people that I get to see, I'm lucky enough to see, are all enjoying it as well. And the people who I haven't are doing Zoom classes from Nantucket, so I'm assuming they're not doing too bad.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take this one, which is a question about students who might have deferred due to COVID, and I think this is a question for higher ed in general. But there's a narrative out there that more students deferred admission, which means you're admitted to a school, but you want to take a gap semester or a gap year. You want to take a little bit of time off before you actually enroll in the school. And a lot of colleges last spring said, if you're admitted to our school, we know that it's a pandemic. We know that things are challenging. You might have pre-existing conditions that you're nervous about, anything like that. So we are going to let you defer admission. You are allowed to say, I'd rather start in the spring, or I'd rather start a year. Clark did that too. Our students had until late summer to tell us what they'd like to do. We extended that deadline for this pool of students. It was more than normal. Usually we see a handful of students defer to do a gap year, but it wasn't extreme. We were definitely in the double digits. And we had also decided very early on that we wanted to have a smaller freshman class last year because we knew that this pandemic was happening, and we knew that social distancing was going to be with us for a little while. So if you are applying as a senior this year to Clark, next year's class will be the same size or a little bit larger than it's always been. So statistics shouldn't change. You have the exact same opportunities that the students who've applied before you had, even if you have a few more students coming in and joining you a year older than they are. We've accounted for all of that, and you're not going to be penalized in this process. All right, a question about how long it takes to get merit scholarships. So our merit scholarships come with your admissions decision, and you can have them for all 4 years, as long as you don't completely fail out of Clark. So you do have to maintain a very reasonable minimum GPA of about a C- in all of your courses. And then those merit scholarships will follow you first year, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. Importantly, too, we are one of 2 schools that I know of that offers what's called an accelerated master's degree program, or a 5th year free. So as a junior, you can apply to one of our master's degree programs, take a handful of master's level courses as a senior, graduate with your bachelor's with your class, go through all the pomp and circumstance, but then we ask you to stay for 1 additional year to earn your master's degree completely tuition free. So as you're thinking about cost at Clark, you can consider that program as well. No, it's not definite that you would do it. You might change your mind, but it is widely used by a lot of students. Actually, 1/3 of our students do the 5th year free program. So it's definitely something you can think about. a little bit questions about campus life. So are you required to live on campus first year, and how's the food? Who wants to tackle that?
I can start. So in general, you're required to live on campus for your first 2 years. There are some exceptions made for students who have been living in the immediate area surrounding Clark for a while. But for the most part, you'll live on campus your first 2 years. After that, about a third of juniors and half of seniors choose to move off campus. Obviously, I stuck around. I really like living in the residence halls. The food, I say it depends, like people's opinions on the food varies greatly, and it depends on what you're used to eating. Don't tell my mom I said this, but I think that the food in the cafeteria is probably healthier and more varied than what I end up eating at home. So I really like the food. But I have friends who, both of their parents are chefs, like actual chefs. That's their job. And they obviously have very different opinions of the food here because they're used to eating like actual genuine chefs cooking for every meal. So it depends on where you're coming from, but personally, I think the food's great.
Thank you. Question about tips for writing the Clark supplement question. So we ask you a little bit about what community means to you. Answer it honestly. And you can also do a little bit of research beforehand. And this is true for all of your supplements at every school you apply to. Just get on the website and learn a little bit about the school. Drop a little bit of knowledge about something that you know. It will always impress us when you've done your homework. So I do recommend doing that, making a couple things Clark specific or wherever else you're applying. It just lets us know, again, we're looking for students who know what Clark is. It lets us know that you know. So those are my tips. Don't sweat it too much. They're all about a paragraph long. So write a decent paragraph and you're good to go. Question about interviewing before or after you submit your application, it really doesn't matter to us. So you can submit either one. We will only interview students starting in the spring of their junior year. So if you are a junior right now and it's the fall, we're not offering interviews yet. But you can interview all spring, all summer, all fall, and into part of the winter. There is a cutoff deadline because at some point we have to have the interview in order to read the application. But it's your choice whenever you feel most comfortable. And let's see. Do either of you know people who took a gap year before they came to Clark? Yeah? You want to talk a little bit about, without naming names, that person's experience?
Yeah, I actually have quite a few friends who took a gap year between high school and college. One of my friends took that time to do some traveling, and I'm pretty sure that they were doing some backpacking in Europe for a couple months. I have another friend who took a year off to work. They applied to a bunch of schools as a senior, and the financial aid just wasn't there, and then they worked. Applied a second time, and college was just more feasible at that point. I also had a few friends who didn't know what they wanted to do and weren't sure what kind of school they were looking for and just needed more time to figure that out. So these were people who, my cousin actually in particular, didn't know whether they wanted a liberal arts school or a large research school, or whether they wanted to go to a business school or kind of more like a trade school. And so there are so many options. They just needed more time. So yeah, that's kind of some of the things that my friends have done with their gap years. And once they're ready to come to college, from everybody that I've talked to, they've appreciated the time off and said that they've benefited from it and it's made them better students.
And in terms of the application process, it's not, the only thing that's going to change is how difficult it is for you to get your transcripts. So when you're in high school, there's usually a pretty seamless process by submitting a form or something like that. When you're out of high school and you're on your gap year applying to colleges, it's just a little bit more emailing and calling on your end. But either way you want to do it is fine. I know that we're getting towards the end of our time. I want to make sure that I answer this one question about a little bit of the application process. Somebody's planning to apply early decision at a top choice college. How do you build the rest of your list when you do that? I would build the list just like I would if I wasn't applying early decision. And I would do it before I apply early decision. So however many schools your family thinks is right for you. I usually recommend anywhere between 5 and 12, depending on the individual. You're still going to want that list. And I think you want it before you submit your early decision, because the worst thing that's going to happen is you're admitted early decision and you spent a little time making a list. And the best thing that's going to, or not the best thing that's going to happen, but if you're not admitted early decision, then you have your list. And in those moments of disappointment, you don't have to regroup and think about that. You've already done that when you were still feeling positive with forward momentum. And that list should still be a bunch of schools that you really like. They came in close second, right? So do the list just like you would anywhere else. To end, I would love to ask you both why you actually came to Clark in the end. So Griffin, do you want to start? Why you chose Clark?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a minute since I've made this decision, but I ended up, like I said, applying to 13 schools, and I got into a wide range of them, and I was faced with a decision. And if you know me, that's not my favorite thing to be faced with. I'm more of a go with the flow, life will pick your path kind of person. And that's awesome for me, but not when they're saying, hey, can you choose where you want to live for the next 4 years? And like I said, there was a lot of stress within that decision. But it was taking a tour. It was seeing Worcester. It was actually just getting a little bit involved in the space, and just even talking to someone, have them remember my name next time I try and communicate. And I felt like less of a number or someone trying to compete to get into the system, and more like someone they were interested. And I was like, okay, this is a process that I'm feeling valued in. And since I've been at Clark, I haven't really felt a diminution in that value. And so that's why I stayed at Clark too, which I think is also an important part of that question, because not everyone stays where they choose, and that's also okay too. So if you find yourself in these meetings 2 years in advance, I hope we're giving better advice at that point too. But yeah, that's why I chose Clark.
Emily?
Yes. So as soon as I toured Clark, I absolutely fell in love with it. So I knew going into applications that Clark was my top choice. And it was my top choice for two main reasons. One of those was I was looking for a school that would feel collaborative rather than competitive in terms of academics. My high school felt very cutthroat around academics, and I was not looking for that in college. The other reason was that I was looking for a school where I felt like I could be authentically myself and not have to worry about being judged by my peers or feeling disrespected by staff or faculty or anything like that. So that was something that was really important to me, that I couldn't really, you can't Google search schools that are going to make you feel that way. You kind of have to interact with people, with current students, current faculty, with your admissions counselors, visiting campus if and when you can. And I just got this sense at Clark that it was going to feel like home. And once I got here, it 100%, it feels that way.
Well, thank you both for your time this afternoon. Thank you to everybody who tuned into this Clarktoberfest session. We were not able to get to all of the questions. There were so many good questions submitted. So if you still have something lingering that didn't get answered, please send us an email. You can go online, you can find your specific counselor, you can email any of us, you can use the email address at the bottom of the screen. Like I said, we are 100% here to help you through this process. And if that means you want to be connected to one of our current students to get to know them a little bit better, we will do that as well. So thank you very much. And Clarktoberfest goes for another week. So you can still earn your free t-shirt. You attend 3 sessions, we'll mail you one. So thank you all. Have a nice afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. Take care.